Hi, and welcome to the Human Design Deconditioning Guide with your host, Jonah Dempsey. Today I'm going to be doing a live human design reading. I have a 5-1 manifesting generator on the left angle cross of identification, who I'll be doing a reading for. And I'm hoping to start doing more of these readings, and I actually have a catalog of quite a few readings I've already done, so I'm going to go through and ask permission to those people because none of the readings had any personally identifiable information. And with their permission, I can start actually posting them here. Because, I think the best thing is if you can get a personal human design reading for yourself, but if you can't, if you can at least hear some of them for people of your same profile or your same type or some of the same open centers, or if you're split definition, some of the bridging gates and so on, that can be really helpful. And I know that when I was learning human design, I came across a collection of readings given by Ra Uru Hu, and those were great because I found one for someone of my same profile and my same incarnation cross and stuff like that. So here's the chart we're going to be looking at today. And let me get this out of the way here. So, yeah, we're going to be looking at a manifesting generator who's a 5-1. See if I can... And this is from Jovian Archive. Special thanks to Jovian Archive. And, so it's my first time doing a live reading like this. I've done a lot of them in person. I've done a lot that are pre-recorded. But I guess, I'm just going to leave the graphic up so people can look at it. All right. So human design, I usually start with kind of setting the stage, the context. Human design gives you all of this incredible information, and it can be a real feast for the mind, and it can be incredible for the mind. And it's so interesting for the mind to be able to go, wow, how could this be true, or is this true, or let me experiment and see if it's true, or let me think about how it might work, and all this stuff. And it's really amazing. It's incredible. For those who don't know what we're looking at here, these are the planetary positions at the moment of birth. Right here, those are the planetary symbols, and the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, each containing 6 lines, are laid out equidistantly across the ecliptic, and so each planet is in a particular gate, as they're called in human design. So this person was born with the sun in the 16th gate, and then the second number, that's what line, so the 5th line. Which is like 5/6 of the way through, approximately, because they were born somewhere within the 5th line, somewhere, or 4/6, I guess. All right, somewhere between 4 and 5/6 of the way through. So, this is a little different than the way I usually do my readings. Going to be kind of explaining and teaching human design as I go, but then also I usually just do audio. But because I have the video here, I might as well be able to explain it, So the planetary positions here, this is the moment of birth. Then what's really interesting, so astrology, of course, uses planetary positions at the moment of birth. Astrology, these all correlate to basically what our astrological placements. It's just instead of the subdivision of 12 of the zodiac, we're looking at a subdivision by 64 of the hexagrams of the I Ching. And then each one further subdivides by the 6 lines, so we're actually looking at 384 subdivisions, or particular placements. But unlike astrology, human design also has this over here, which is really interesting. It's supposedly essentially the natal chart of your unconscious. If the right is kind of the mind and the personality of the individual, the left is the design, and it's the body, and it's the unconscious. And so this is actually calculated if you take the sun and you go 88 degrees retrograde of the solar arc of where the sun is at the moment of birth. Basically, you just go 88 degrees back, and then you look at the planetary positions, and that's what you get here. And And these are all mapped to locations in the body graph, which is kind of an auric map, you could say, of the energy centers. Kind of similar to chakras. These are energy centers in the body. We have the head, the ajna, the throat, the G center, the ego, the sacral, the root, the solar plexus, and the spleen. And so I'm going to I'll explain as I go, but I'm basically going to start just how I would normally do a reading if it were just a private reading for an individual. And I usually start by setting the stage, and I say, okay, so what you're looking at when you're looking at your body graph is how you're designed. This total thing, even though it says design on this side, really the whole thing is your design. And what it means to be how you're designed is how your body, including your auric body or your energetic body, is designed to operate, to move through the world, and ultimately designed to make decisions that send it on the right trajectory, the right sequence of events, so that it doesn't meet resistance. The concept of resistance is basically this kind of wear and tear that happens when you enter into the wrong sequence of events because you're going against the energetic flow. So you're a manifesting generator. And I'm just going to talk to the person who has this chart now, because that's easier. You're a manifesting generator. So your natural flow is to wait to respond, to basically respond to life. And that's because you have defined sacral here. You're also not a standard, you're actually a generator with manifesting potential. You're not a standard MG because there's no direct connection from the sacral to the throat. You have the throat being powered by the solar plexus here. The solar plexus is a motor. And then you have your sacral here. So it's kind of, especially being triple split, it's really an interesting body graph. It's a very multifaceted person who has different sides of them that come out. And this 35-36, if you didn't have the sacral, you would just be a manifester. But if you didn't have that solar plexus defined, you'd be a generator because there's no other motors connecting to the throat. So it's kind of interesting. It's almost like you're a generator and a manifester, as opposed to some people who have manifesting generator, the direct connection, like they'll have the 34-20. But you are actually more a generator because if you have the sacral defined, it changes everything. See, if you don't have the sacral center defined and then you have a motor connecting to the throat, you're like a manifester and you actually have a repelling aura that would push people away. But because you have the sacral defined, you're very much a generator. And this is what I mean about not getting resistance. You will get resistance if you initiate. If you walk into a room and say, hey, how's it going? You're going to get resistance. If you walk up to a barista and say, hey, I'd like to order a coffee, you're going to get resistance. Because the generator is constantly interrupting everyone when they don't wait to respond to a situation. So a generator has to just walk into a room and then wait for something to happen, wait for someone to notice them. You can respond to somebody noticing you. See, that's the thing. Two generators, they walk up to each other, they each look at each other. There's a moment that happens where each of them can then enter into response with each other. But it's so different than if you're literally interrupted in what you're doing. You're having a conversation and someone comes up and says, oh, excuse me, can I blah, blah, blah. You see this happen at restaurants all the time where a generator server will interrupt what people are doing. Now, a manifester server is never really interrupting. It's weird. It's like they somehow know, or maybe they are interrupting, but it doesn't feel like they're interrupting. It feels like a natural flow. To give an example, I'm a generator, and I have undefined throat, so it's even harder for me. If you have defined throat, you can kind of do the manifesting thing a little bit, where you can get people's attention easily. But with my undefined throat, here, I'll pull up my chart. Just a minute while we look at this. So I was at Rupert Sheldrake talk in Seattle, and I was standing outside, and he was talking, or I think maybe at this point someone else was talking, and I had just gone outside, and there was a large group of people who were all outside because it was so packed in there. It wasn't that it wasn't an interesting talk, it was just really packed. And they were talking and laughing, and they were talking loudly. Here's my chart while we look. That's me. So you can see I have undefined throat, and I'm a generator. And someone had kind of came to the door and said, "Hey, could you guys keep it down?" So I said to the group, I said, "Hey everyone, we're being a little loud. Can we keep it down?" And like nobody listened to me because I was initiating. Even though I kind of responded to that person, like there was enough time that had passed in between them telling me. It wasn't natural. It wasn't an organic. And I didn't have the strong sacral response like, "Oh yeah, I'll tell them to keep it down. Let's do it." And then I didn't go, "Hey everyone, let's," out of that sacral response. Instead I just said, "Hey, can we keep it down?" And then nobody listened to me. Everyone ignored me. And I tried to get their attention more, and then I didn't want to be too loud, but I said, hey, we really got to be quiet. They're doing a talk in there. Nothing. Everyone just kept laughing. A moment later, my manifestor friend, Justin, came out. He just opened the door for a second. He said, "Hey, everyone, can you be quiet? Can you keep it down?" Said the exact same thing I said. And he said it even quieter than I did. And everyone just turned, and then they were just like, hush, hush, hush. So that's the funny thing is, you can experiment with this stuff, and it seems crazy to think it would work, but what human design literally is the mechanics of, they call it the mechanics of the Maya, but it's the mechanics of energetic interactions together. This is what it's all about. It's this kind of, mechanics of interactions. So now I'm going to look at, okay, so yeah, triple split. So you're a manifesting generator, but you're really not a standard manifesting generator at all. You're a generator with manifesting potential, and it's only really manifesting when it's connected, which can primarily be through an auric connection, or it can also be through transits. But just to give more context, what this is really about, so this is about making decisions as yourself, and that's the whole idea of strategy and authority, is really making decisions with your body, making decisions with your unconscious, which is the consciousness of the body. And people do all different attempts to try to do this, muscle testing and so on, but this is what it's all about. And human design gives you this map where you're able to look at what is you and what is not you. And what is not you, the not self, are going to be these undefined, unactivated centers. The ego, the G center, and the spleen. So just to kind of give context to what human design is proposing here is that there's essentially a struggle between your body, which wants to make decisions according to its natural authority, which for you is the solar plexus, and the mind, which wants to make decisions according to the not self. And so we're going to go into that, and we're going to kind of look at the characteristics first of all. Like we'll look at your channels, and we'll look at some of these centers you have defined and so on, and talk about them. But then we're going to look at the not self. And that's really the crux of it, is that the not self is going to be continually trying to tempt you to make decisions according to its criteria. And so we'll go into what those criteria are. And it's basically it's things that are very tempting. You can see where all the temptation is. You have undefined ego. Well, the undefined ego is always tempted for anything it can do to improve itself. Most people with undefined ego who get into human design, it's because they want to improve themselves. Because the ego is all about self-esteem, and when it's undefined, it has a widely variable self-esteem that can go between feeling okay about itself to feeling like it doesn't deserve, it's undeserving, and it can be threatened and so on, and want to improve itself. So what's interesting, and these undefined centers also become the greatest sources of wisdom. But they only become the greatest sources of wisdom when you stop using them to make decisions. So this is the real premise of human design. The premise of human design is your whole life you've been making decisions according to these three areas: the undefined ego, the undefined G center, and the undefined spleen. And I'll go into detail on those later, but the gist of it is making decisions that help you improve, or that prove your value, or prove what a good person you are, and then making decisions that give you direction and purpose in life with the G center, and kind of a grass is always greener feeling of making a decision. Well, is this going to bring me to the right place? Am I going to really feel at home there? Is it going to, and then finally, ultimately, I guess, the outermost surface, because there's a hierarchy. The ego is the strongest. The G center is going to be the second strongest. And then the spleen will be the kind of outer surface of holding on to things, just holding on, afraid to let go, right? And the spleen is a fear center. And so the decision making is going to be, someone might say, like, hey, do you want to have this job? And instead of trusting your sacral to go, uh-huh, or uh-uh, and then instead of watching how that emotional wave changes that sacral response over time, and then the moment of clarity where you go, oh, it's, I've seen it from all the angles, now it makes sense. Instead of trusting that sacral and that solar plexus working together, there's going to be this question, well, is this going to help me improve? Is this going to prove myself? Is this going to give me a direction in life? Is it going to... And so on. So we'll get to that. But first we're going to look at some of the characteristics. But just again, to set the stage, we're going to tell you, these are characteristics of yourself, but the really juicy stuff is the not self, because the not self is how most everyone is living. And they're living in the not self because that is what is so exciting and stimulating, and that's where the undefined centers really amplify, and they feel really... that's where the real... how to put it really? It's kind of where the intensity of life is in the not self. Like what we have, when I'm talking about your attributes, that's going to be how, you might recognize yourself in it, but it's also just going to be kind of how you impact other people and just your general way of being. So let's go through those now. I guess we could really start anywhere. Let's start at the top. And by the way, you're triple split. And so triple split is really interesting because triple split, decently rare. I think it's only 10 or maybe 15% of the population. It means you have 3 different definition areas. You have the head and the ajna here, then you have the throat and the solar plexus here, then you have the sacral and the root here. So when you're triple split, you kind of have 3 different personalities. You kind of have 3 different ways of being. And actually, there's only one that has conscious activation, fully conscious. The 952 is fully conscious. So you're aware of that process as it happens, and you can notice it as it's happening. And it's very much a conscious process. The 6447 is just happening in the background. And then, bam, it just somehow, something appears out of it, The process finishes, and you go, oh, okay, because the 6447 is the process of confusion to realization, basically. But it's unconscious, it's automatic. You're confused about things, and then suddenly, oh, I had an epiphany, and then you're not confused anymore. And that process is just going on in the background. Then this one is half-half, the 35-36. You may be more aware of the 35 than you are of the 36. And I'll talk about each of these. But let's just start at the top. Okay, so I actually... so the 6447, I pulled up a website about it, or a PDF I found. So the 6447, this is basically, this is the abstract thinking process. So it's all about moving from, it's a design of mental activity is what they call it, but it's moving from mental activity to clarity. It's not logical. It's not about logic at all. It's about mental activity. So basically what this means is that when you have this 6447 here, let me zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so with this 6447, it's a very busy mind. When you have the 6447, you have to let the mind do its thing, but realize that the mind is there to be an outer authority. The mind is there to communicate and to convey information. And with the 6447, you can actually, well, not to mention, your 64 is part of your incarnation cross. So this is a pretty major, let's see. Yeah, it's your design Earth. So it's a pretty major one. It's a first line. Basically, what it means is that, and you have 64 and 63 in your incarnation cross. These are very prominent placements. The sun and the earth of your design are there. And so it's a busy mind that's very active, that is able to basically it has a start, a middle, and an end. It's the abstract process. So abstract is different from logic. And the abstract is basically about you start something and you're totally confused by it, and then you have these epiphanies that crystallize and collapse the contents of your psyche, basically, and then they make sense, and then you have mental ease. And so it's kind of like going, but it's not really, I guess the abstract is cyclical, but it's more like things have a clear beginning and a middle and an end. Now, because it's unconscious, you might not necessarily notice it except in hindsight, but you can notice where the confusion basically begins, and then by the end of it, there's no confusion. It's not like logic. See, logic is very different from the abstract. To give a little context here, this channel is logical, and then this channel over here is abstract. This channel is abstract. This channel over here is logical. And the logic and the abstract are two different kinds of circuitry in human design. And they're very, very different from each other. The abstract, so you have this abstract channel, is very poetic. And it uses images, and it uses stories and narratives. And it has a beginning and a middle and an end. And it's kind of a... It's like your mind is basically returning to particular things and extracting new things from them. The abstract, you can think of it like extracting. When they talk about abstract in human design, they really use it to mean almost like revisiting something in memory and extracting new contents from it. And you actually have another abstract down here too, which I'll get to in a moment. This is also abstract. This 3536 is also abstract. So you actually have two abstract channels, and then you have the logic format channel, which, because it's a format channel, it kind of overrides everything else. So you're very abstract and logical both. And you have no individual channels, and you have no tribal channels. And I'll get to what that means in a moment. But basically, just talking about your mind here, what it's showing is that, you do have a great mind for getting clarity on things, and for sticking with the process from confusion to leading to clarity. Let's see what Ra Uruhu has to say about it. The 6447. So the abstract is really, what you're really looking at is the experiential. That's what the abstract means. It's about experiences. So yeah, when you have that, this is an experiential mind. It's an experiential mind. Now, the mind plays with the ways the concepts look and feeds the possibility of concepts differently, toys with things. When you're looking at this experiential mind, it's far, far from being grounded. It can get silly. It can get way out there. You can see that the force that is here in this experiential mental process is the force of activity. Busy, 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 busy. The experiential mind, doesn't really understand rules. Because it doesn't understand rules, anything can lead to anything. So it's so interesting. It's so different from logic. Now, you do have gate 63, which is a logical gate, and you have the logical format channel. But again, because you have this channel activated, the channel is really the life force. The channel is very powerful. Like, this gate plugs into people who have gate 4, and then the logical side comes out more. Like, I have gate 4. So if we were communicating with each other, my gate 4 is the gate of answers. People ask me questions and I answer. I don't ask a lot of questions. Gate 63 is the gate of questions. And the gate of skepticism and doubt and all this stuff. Being suspicious. And so that's more on the logical side, and like that'll activate, especially when you're in the aura of somebody who has gate 4, or when there's transit in gate 4. That'll activate, and then you'll definitely be feeling that logical mind. But your default is to have the 6447, where you're basically, it's the abstract process. It's a very different process. It doesn't necessarily hold together when that anything can lead to anything, and you hand it over to somebody who's logical, and they go, what? How did you get from there to there? This is the experiential abstract activity. It isn't just dealing with one thing one way, it's dealing with one thing so many ways that it sometimes gets off on a branch and forgets all about where it started. Mental activity. But there's something really incredible about the experiential process. The the experiential mental force. With all that activity, there's the moment that comes of, got it, this clarity. If you think about the mental abstract force, it's a pressure relationship to the way in which the emotional works, particularly the emotional abstract, which you also have. That's over here. The 36, 35 is the emotional right there. Solar plexus is the emotional center, and that's the emotional abstract right there. So it's interesting, both of those. But talking back to 6447, so it's a pressure relationship to the way the emotional works, particularly the emotional abstract, but even generally, because what you're really looking at is that it's this experiential force that actually dabbles in all kinds of possibilities, regardless of whether there are rules that say that you can do that or not. And because there are all these different ways in which something can be processed in that activity, there's the possibility of landing on that one thing that suddenly mysteriously emerges. It's this making sense. And this making sense isn't just about, all right, this is the way we look at it, this is the way it works. It's simply busy, and it's busy dealing with the consequences of being alive. So, okay, feel free to look this up. This is in the Life Force lectures. It's available for free, but basically what I wanted to get at, I think that's good for now. This is on humandesignforyou.com, and it's the Life Force lectures. What I wanted to get at is essentially that, just kind of talking about the circuitry here. So the abstract circuitry is all about ruminating back on what's already happened and extracting different things from them, and it's so different from logic, where logic is all about basically repeatable patterns. And for the abstract, something is completely singular. It's singular. It's all about the singularity, that you can revisit that singular experience and get new things from it, but the experience never repeats. That's something interesting about the abstract. And I'll get to that when we get to your next one here. So you have this other abstract channel, this 35, 36 right here. The channel of transitoriness, the channel of the jack of all trades. So just to give a comparison to the logic, so we have logic over here. The 1648 is a logical channel. 16 is the gate of skills. 48 is the gate of depth. So somebody who has this whole channel, they're going to be the kind of person that if they want to learn piano, say, they're going to take piano lessons every week, year after year after year after year, and they're going to get better and better and better. Repeating, doing the same thing. That is logic. That's how logic works. Logic is about repetition and perfection and getting the formula down and improving the formula and making modifications to the formula and just repeating over and over and over. And then you have abstract over here. This is the kind of person that it would be like death for you to have to go to the same place every week to learn piano. It would be way more healthy for you to learn piano one week and learn flute the next and learn drums the next and have all these different experiences, because the 35-36, again, it's abstract. It wants the experience, and the experience has a beginning and a middle and an end. And once it's had that experience, it doesn't need to have it again. It doesn't need to have it again, Now, part of you needs to do things over and over again. That's the 952, because that's logical. So part of you is very much about that logical repetition. And because it's a format energy, it tends to dominate your whole aura, so people will pick up on this when you are in their presence. The 952 is what they're going to feel much more than the others. But this 35-36, it's a really interesting one. It's all about experience, and it's collective, and so it's kind of impersonal. Both logic and abstract are both collective. So it's a little impersonal. It's a little bit like, come on this experience with me. We'll have this experience together, and then we'll go on to the next thing. And it's no big deal. It's just, it's not like sticky the way the tribe is. Tribal channels are like, hey, we had that experience together. This means we're bonded for life, and you're going to support me, and I'll support you. An individual means, yeah, we had that experience together, but I'm doing my own thing, and we each had our own personal experience. But when it's collective like this, it's all about sharing experiences with people and being kind of open to the universal other in a way. So that 35-36 it really is about getting out there in the world, about having a lot of experiences, and then basically being innocent. 36 is the gate of innocence, and 35 is the gate of experience. So it's about like going from being really innocent and not experienced, and then it's also the gate of crisis. You have a crisis, something happens, and then you gain that experience. And there's a lot of other connotations. What you'll find with human design is that the gates and the channels go very deep. For instance, just to give another example of the difference between logic and abstract, 16 and 48 together is the channel of talent. And basically it's about skills, working with the depth of solutions to be a talented person. So this is like very proficient. Like you find people who are very, very proficient in their field, and that's logic. And logic is really dry. Logic is on the splenic side, and it's dry, and there's not a bit of sexiness in it. And then the solar plexus is where you have sexuality, and also food, and anything that has to do with pleasure or pain. And so the 35-36 becomes, it's a mirror image. On the abstract side is the channel of sexual talent. So it actually is, like, there's very little about sexuality in human design. In fact, of all the gates of love, only one of them has anything to do with sex, but is gate 36 is the gate of actual sexual activity. And that's also something that's part of experience. You know, this is kind of, it's part of the same stream. You have 41 also. So 41 connects to 30. This is all the same stream. This is the human experiential way. 41 connects to 30, connects to 36, connects to 35. And 41 is basically like fantasy and yearning. This is like the person hasn't left home yet, and they're stuck at home, and they're in a small town, and they have like that fantasy of the big city, or they have that fantasy of the partner they're going to meet, or the fantasy of the kind of life they're going to have. And then they finally get out there, and gate 30 is meeting the fates, and that's where everything doesn't really go the way you expected. And then you get 36, you get the crisis, and finally you survive through the crisis, and you get 35, which is kind of the been there, done that. I've had the experience, now I can look back on the experience, and I can reflect on that experience. But with this 36-35, it's very experiential. Now, the interesting thing is that I'm telling you all this, none of the stuff is anywhere as exciting as the not-self themes. Like, we're going to get to those in a minute, like the not-self ego, the not-self G-center. And the reason is because all this stuff is, like, actually more impactful to people around you. Like, yes, with 35-36, I can tell you interesting things about yourself, but really, people in your life are going to feel it more strongly if they don't have it. Like, for instance, I have that channel completely undefined. The channel is totally open for me. Here's mine again, right over here. So I have that channel totally open. There's that 35-36, completely undefined for me. And so people that have 35-36 in my life are people that actually bring a lot of excitement and desire to travel. Or if they have gate 41, I start to fantasize about traveling and about having new experiences, and they actually galvanize me to go have those experiences. So that's the interesting thing. Like, when I'm talking about your characteristics, you might relate to some of these characteristics of who you are as a person, but that's not really the most exciting part of human design. The most interesting part about human design is the not self themes, and that really tells you what is your struggle and where are the dilemmas, where's the potential suffering in the life, and what you can do to alleviate that, and basically to really be yourself. So that's a really interesting, that's the interesting part. But I'm going through the characteristics now, even though these are kind of characteristics that mainly would probably affect other people. Thank you for watching all, by the way, and anyone who has comments, I got the comment thing right here. I'll check periodically. So, okay, so you have 35-36. This is very experiential. It's all about, here, let me put that down there. I can see the comments. So, it's all about going out there and having that experience. You know, it can get bored. It wants excitement. It wants a certain amount of stimulation. That's part of the abstract circuitry, too. Ra kind of had a funny comment for people who have this channel who are in relationships, which is that it's very important for their relationships to stay exciting. So, you know, you always see those Vogue magazines, how to spice up your sex life, or how to have exciting this and that. Well, even if you don't have this channel, that's the thing. Like, if you have this channel, you're actually probably getting that excitement. But people who don't have it because they're not self are always kind of yearning for it and kind of wanting that. But even if you have this channel, it's really important to like Ra's advice for if you're in a relationship with this channel, you have this channel and you're in a a partnership, whether it's a marriage or dating someone or something like that. It's really important to go on trips together. It's important to have new experiences together. And it's particularly important for sexuality because, as I mentioned, gate 36 is a sexual gate, and the whole abstract stream has to do with sexuality. So sexuality will suffer when there's not a certain amount of variety and novelty and new experiences. So that's just something interesting about that one. So yeah, and you see how the abstract is just everything about the abstract is so different from the logical, where the abstract is about going out there in life and having the experience. Like, I think one of the examples I heard was logic could build a bus and design the bus and predict all the different things you need to know about the bus and what the mileage will be and all these different things. But abstract is going to tell you what the experience of being on that bus is like. And the abstract only needs to be on that bus once, and they can keep returning to that experience again and again to extract new information from it. To a certain point. At a certain point, they've gotten everything. They've gotten all the juice out of it. But yeah, with this 3536, this is like you've had those experiences, and then you think back on them again and again, and eventually you get to the point where you've gotten everything out of that experience that you can get. This is also what gives you solar plexus activation, which is your authority. So when you have solar plexus as an authority, it means you have to go through that process to gain clarity. And because it's abstract activation, what it means is that every process has a beginning and a middle and an end, and you don't really get the clarity till the end. So the important thing is to make decisions out of clarity. For instance, I know somebody with this activation of the solar plexus who went to the car lot and bought a new car. Same day. She really liked the car. And I said, but human design, you're not supposed to just, you have solar plexus defined. You need to wait for the clarity. And she goes, oh, I'm clear. I'm totally clear on it. That's not clarity. There's no clarity in the moment. There's no truth in the now for people who have solar plexus defined. In fact, any decision you have to make, it's important to just kind of wait on that decision, you don't make that decision so fast. You really need to wait on it. So, and now you have the 952 right here. So the 952, this is as dry gets. And I know because I have the 952. And when you're really noticing this 952 as like the kind of active dominant theme is when you're deep in concentration, because it's a channel of concentration. Gate 9 is the gate of focus, and 52 is the gate of stillness. And the 952 together is about concentration. So it's been described as somebody who kind of carries the vibe of a library with them. Like you go into the room, it's kind of like, hush, everyone gets quiet. When you turn door handles, you probably, like when you open doors, you probably like turn the handle when you're closing it to really quietly close the door. When you're watching a movie or something, it's like, shh, hush. It's kind of like constantly telling everyone to shut up, constantly hushing everyone. Like, just focus, just concentrate. But what's amazing is you can impart this on other people. So if somebody has to do their taxes, you're sitting next to them, suddenly they have all of this focus for doing their taxes. That's how conditioning works. Just like I was saying, someone like me, I don't have this 35-36. So if I hang out with you, pretty soon I want to have all these experiences, right? Or someone who doesn't have this and they hang out with you, they have so much mental activity. I know it because I have a good friend who has a 64-47, and my head is spinning for like 2 hours after we finish hanging out because my head just won't stop chattering, and usually my head is actually very quiet. But, and again, you might not have your head chattering because it's like, that's why I'm saying, like, I can describe the process, but really it's about almost like how you impact people more than who you are. But it is also about who you are. You might recognize, but it's unconscious. You might not even notice it. It's kind of a background process for you. So with this 952, this is kind of the person who's like, you're like sitting under the tree and everyone says, hurry up, help us out. But you have defined root. When you have defined root, nobody can make you hurry up at all. When you have defined root, it's like, hey, is it going to be done by Friday? Yeah, probably. You're not going to rush to get it done. you will rush at the last minute when when you need to rush. When you have defined root, you have a very good sense of pressure and the ability to withstand tremendous amounts of pressure and almost enjoy building up that pressure and enjoy waiting for the last minute to this pressure cooker of like the moment of all the pressure is on. And then you're like, okay, let's do this. But again, you're under the tree, you're sitting in the shade, everyone is toiling, and they're all like, hey, like, help us out. Come on, hurry up. It's not going to be done in time. It's not going to be done. And you're just sitting and sitting and sitting. And then finally, on your pace, on your timing, when you're ready, you get up and it's just like a bullseye and you hit the arrow, you hit the bullseye. And everything else everyone said doesn't really matter because you've been concentrating, you've been focusing. And so the 952 is a really interesting one where it's good at long periods of time of intense focus. It's also really good at waiting and having that stillness and then bursting into action like long after and then solving everything because it didn't waste a whole bunch of energy. It's like, I think of it as like the amount of energy it takes to remain still. Like everyone thinks if you're still, you're not really using energy, but that's not true. This is a very charged stillness. It's a stillness that you can just sit there and have this pressure. It's like pressurized stillness. It's an adrenaline center. This is an adrenaline center. So the gate of stillness is in the adrenaline center. So people think, oh, you're being still, you must be relaxing. No, stillness can be like Sisyphus holding the boulder, or Atlas holding up the earth or whatever. Like it's like flexing your muscles to remain still, so to speak. But anyway, there's a very intense ability to concentrate here. This is all about concentration. I have a little thing I pulled up here. The channel of concentration. What we are dealing with is the channel of concentration. That's not 952 right there. And concentration, in a sense, aspects are derived from both the activations, but that is something else. So the two activations are the 9 and the 52. 9 is focus and 52 is stillness. This concentration is not sitting still, but keeping still is an aspect of concentration, but they're not the same thing. To be still doesn't mean that one is necessarily concentrated at all. Show me somebody with a 52nd gate who does not have the 9th gate, and I will show you somebody who, in sitting still, is not concentrated. They're uncomfortable and irritated. It's something else. It's the same thing about the 9th gate, the taming power of the small, the potential that is fulfilled through detailed attention to all aspects. But that's not concentration. That's an energy potential. It isn't necessarily focused, this channel of focus and concentration, this design of determination. We always think the channel is the gates. If you ask people to describe a channel for you rather than dealing with the keynote and the design of the channel and elaborating on that, they talk gates. They'll either describe it with the accent on one end of the system or the other end, but it's the channel. So what he's saying is if you ask someone to describe this, they'll say, well, concentration is, and they'll talk about focus, and that's 9. Or they'll say concentration is about stillness, and that's 52. But it's not about focus or stillness. It's something greater than the sum of the parts. It's the quantum of the two. This is the format energy to concentrate. And of course, to concentrate, the concentration is more than intellectual concentration. We're talking about an energy format. To concentrate things, to bring them closer together. And it's a determined energy. It builds momentum. You notice that when you first begin to have to study, when you're in school and you're studying for some kind of examination, what you notice about that is that the concentration isn't there until there's a point where somehow you're lost in it. You get lost in it. Everything gets honed in to what that determined focus is going to be. And this is an energy that's driving the whole logical process, the whole pattern process. So basically, yeah, that's what's interesting because it's so different from the abstract because it's logical and it's a format energy. It really is kind of a dominant of your chart. Now, because you're a triple split, in different situations, different aspects are going to come out. Some people are going to really bring out that 64-47. Some people are going to bring out that 35-36. And some people are going to bring out the 9-52. And that's why it's really important for the triple split. The worst thing for the triple split is to get stuck, like cabin fever, like stuck in one place for a long time, or stuck with one person for a long time. Triple split needs a lot of different people coming in and out of their lives. They need different locations. you're kind of designed to be in motion. Like, your ideal is actually to be like going around town, going to different meetings, going to different places. The other advice I give to triple splits, anytime you have a split, you're going to have stuff happening in these different centers that builds up and doesn't communicate to the other centers. So you have some emotional clarity that hasn't yet reached your sacral energy center. Or you have some like epiphany up here that doesn't quite reach the throat. You can't really express it yet, because they're split. They're split off from each other. And you need somebody who has gate 30, for instance, to connect that solar plexus to the root. Or you need somebody that has, gate 23 to connect the ajna to the throat. And the fact of the matter is, when you're out in public, you're going to be around people that have these gates, because there's just so many people out there and they all have so many activations. Like, my advice for people with triple split is at least once a week, but really a couple times a week, a few times a week if you can, go to cafes, go to places where you're in other people's aura and you can sit for a couple hours and be in their aura, because as you're in their aura, the information will connect across these bridges. And pretty soon you'll be able to articulate the epiphany that you had, because that 6447 information will connect to the throat through gate 23. Or pretty soon you'll be able to have access to that clarity. You'll understand the clarity intellectually, or the clarity will connect through your sacral root. So basically just like be private in public. That's what Ra always says. When you have a split, be private in public. Find places you can go where you get bridged. But don't rely on the same person always to bridge you, right? That's the thing, is like you don't want to always be bridged by the same person. You don't want to get stuck cabin fever. One of the worst feelings for the triple split is somebody that bridges all of their different centers together. They feel suffocated. The other interesting thing is, depending on what bridges the person has, they're going to bring out different aspects. Like, actually, I don't bridge any of yours. I was going to say that if we hung out, I don't bridge any of yours. I don't bridge anything. But somebody that, has gate 30 is going to bring out a totally different dynamic. They're going to really activate that experiential abstract part of you. Whereas somebody who has gate 23 is going to have a very different dynamic and activate that channel, and so on. Yeah. So, oops. Oh yeah, and I didn't really talk too much about the channel of transitoriness. But you can look these up if you're interested, learning more about the gates. I think the gates and the channels are pretty cool, pretty powerful. They can get overwhelming because there's so many. But I do love the circuitry, how circuitry works. Circuitry is whether something's abstract, or whether it's logical, or whether it's tribal or individual, and so on. Okay, so we've looked at these channels, and I do want to talk about the profile, but I think I'm going to do a separate one for profile. You're a 5-1, and 5-1 is very fascinating, and I would love to talk about that. But I think I really want to get to the juicy stuff, which is the not self themes. So basically, you have 3 undefined centers, and these 3 undefined centers are going to each be clamoring for decision-making power. And as you start to experiment with making decisions according to strategy and authority, the mind really doesn't like this. It's like giving up its power. It's being usurped. So just to be clear, making decisions and strategy and authority is you don't say yes to something, or say no to something even, until you have clarity about it. And you're in touch with both your sacral and your solar plexus, and you notice how the sacral response changes over time. So someone says, hey, do you want to go on a trip to Russia? And you go, that sounds amazing. I've been wanting to do that for years, and you really want to go. But then a couple days later, someone asks you, and they say, do you want to go? And you go, yeah, I want to go. But your tone of voice betrays the fact you don't really want to go, because the sacral response isn't really there. But then later, it comes back around again, and you really want to go. I mean, this is the thing, is like, it's knowing when you have that clarity and trusting the clarity. And the clarity won't always be there. It's like the clarity will appear for these moments of clarity where you really know and you have this realization, and that's what you can trust. But not the 6447 epiphanic realization. It's more an emotional clarity. And so to give you an example of emotional clarity, I have a friend who I was very close with, who had a lot of excitement about me as a friend. And she is emotionally defined, and she was very excited about, like, wow, I have this new friend. And so she started to kind of be really happy about me and go and come to the conclusion, Jonah's a really good friend of mine. Well, she was still on the high part of her wave. Her wave had not yet crashed to Jonah's a bad friend. So that happened, and then she thought, wow, Jonah's not actually a very good friend to me, because like maybe I didn't call her for a couple of weeks or something happened, and she was so disappointed in me as a person. And this is the low part of her wave. And thankfully she knows human design, because she could tell me this in a human design vocabulary. Although even without human design, it's still something you notice happening. But she told me, she said, for a couple of weeks I thought you really weren't a good friend, but then I had this moment of clarity where it just dawned on me that you not calling me was not about any of that, and you actually are a really good friend. And I thought back on some of the conversations we had, and some of the things we did, and some of the things you told me, and I realized what a good friend you are, and I just want you to know that I'm really clear on that now. So that's a perfect example of the emotional clarity process, which in that case took like a month. It doesn't always take that long, but it's like a digestive process. It's a process that takes time. Having emotional definition means you're really here to be slower. You're not here to make decisions in the moment. You're not here to be spontaneous. You're not here to immediately go, yeah, let's do it, out of excitement and spontaneity. That's not you. That's the not self. So it's so much more important for you having that emotional definition to wait for the clarity to happen, to just kind of naturally emerge. And really, it's almost like you have this pond, and there's these waves in the pond, or this lake or whatever, and someone throws in a pebble, it's not a big deal, but someone throws in a boulder, it's going to have a huge wave. It's going to take weeks for you to process it and know how you feel about it. And people who have emotional definition are often very out of touch with their emotions. That's what's funny. They often come across very unemotional, or they'll come across really impulsive and spur of the moment. And those are two sides to it. And basically, as you begin to trust the emotional clarity, you find the right speed and you calibrate yourself to the speed of your wave. And when you're not doing that, you're either trying to discharge the emotion right away by making a decision right away, like, I want this car, let's do it, okay, sold. Or, you get really excited about something, yeah, let's go on the trip, it'll be great. And you go on the trip out of excitement. Or you get offered a job. Yeah, it's my dream job, let's do it. Or the opposite, something really negative happens and you're emotional, so you impulsively, reject the person or throw them away or throw something away. Like the artist who's emotionally defined and creates a work they really like, and then in a moment of despair, they destroy the work. And then later they regret destroying it because they made the decision to destroy it when they were really low on their wave. So there's the impulsivity of emotional discharge. Then there's the opposite that happens with emotional definition. The opposite is, I'm not going to express these emotions. I'm not going to let them out. Well, everyone else can feel it. Everyone else can feel that, because you're putting out the emotional frequency, and it's the undigested, unprocessed stuff. It'd be like, if you would just cry, everyone could take a breath and relax, I have undefined solar plexus. You've seen my chart here. Here's my chart again. And so I have this totally undefined solar plexus right here, this one. And so I pick up other people's emotional states. And, they try to hide it, but they can't hide that. If you have emotional definition and something happened and you're disappointed about it, maybe you're just... Oh, I know one. I know someone who had a gallery space or an art studio and lost his art studio because he had to move because there was a roof leak or something. And then he wasn't sure if he had enough money to get another one because it was a really good deal. And so he had to so he was so sad about losing his art studio. And guess what? We start hanging out and he doesn't say a word. He doesn't seem emotional at all. How are you doing? Oh, I'm okay. How are you? Oh, good. What have you been up to lately? Oh, I've been doing this and this. It sounds great. Yeah, so great. All this surface talk, right? But underneath this, I know something's wrong. Because I have undefined... Look, again, that's me right here. I have undefined solar plexus, And with that undefined solar plexus, I am so keyed in to people's emotional states. And it's painful for me. It's like feeling suffocated when they have some big emotional thing going on. So and they're not like dealing with it, right? So he has this big emotional thing going on, and oh, oops, what am I doing there? Okay, sorry about that. And so he has this big emotional thing going on, and I'm like, what's going on? And finally he tells me, I lost my art studio. And I can like sigh of relief. Feels amazing for someone who has that emotional definition to finally let it out. Because when you have that emotional definition, you know, here's you, and you have that emotional definition here, that solar plexus defined, it's like you're putting out this wave of energy that fills up the room, and people can't breathe when you have this built-up emotion that you're not processing. And when you're sad about something, but you don't really know you're sad about it, stuff like that. So anyway, that's my little mini rant for people who have emotional definition. First of all, don't be impulsive, because if you're just trying to discharge your emotional state, you're going to make bad decisions. Second, don't let it go too slow either, because if you're not, like, that's what I mean. Like, it's either too fast or too slow. Too fast means as soon as the emotion happens, you let it out and discharge it. That's too fast. You're meant to like ruminate and like stew on that emotion. But then if you stew too much, or if you're just keeping it inside, never really talking about it, never really expressing it, oh, I don't want to bring people down, I don't want to make them sad, so I won't talk about this heavy thing. No, you have to do it. You have to, because otherwise they're all going to feel it anyway. It's going to come out in your aura, and they're going to feel totally whatever your emotional state is. So the emotional center, you really just have to savor your emotions. And it's easy to savor a positive emotion. Well, somewhat. Even positive ones, people tend to rush through or want too much of. But it's really hard to savor negative emotions, but they're also meant to be savored. And by that I mean like tasted, like really like it's like when you look at a really good painting and you're like savoring the painting, or like when you're having a really great experience and you kind of slow down, you look at the person you're with, or you look at the thing that's happening, and you kind of like savor that. That's what emotions are meant for. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm just slamming people who have emotional definition, because emotions are where all the sexiness of life comes from, the juiciness of life, the pleasure and the pain, the color of life, the scent of life. You know, it's you people who are emotionally defined who are bringing that out of everybody. I have the most dry, dull, unemotional life unless I'm around somebody who activates my solar plexus, or they themselves have solar plexus activated. And then suddenly I'm writing poetry and I'm writing music, and I want to go on trips and have adventures and have all these experiences, and I'm totally activated and kind of come to life. Life becomes technicolor, and life, you know, things smell better and things taste better and stuff like that. So, and I don't want to sound like I'm knocking that. But anyway, just when you have a solar plexus defined, you really gotta just be in touch with your emotions. You need people like me who have undefined solar plexus and who aren't living the not self theme with the undefined solar plexus, which is avoiding confrontation, to actually tell you. Like, that's something I learned, is that my whole life I was tiptoeing around people who were emotionally defined. So I didn't want to confront them. I didn't want to hurt their feelings, stuff like that. And then, a couple of years ago, I really started getting into human design. I began to just confront them. And so now I'll say, hey, you seem really down. What's going on? And they'll go, oh, no, I'm not. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. And I'll say, no, come on. Like, something's happening. Like, you seem sad. And then sometimes they'll start crying. Or they'll say, like, how did you know? Like, how did you even notice that? You know, because people who have defined solar plexus, unless they're really in touch with their emotions, they have this whole like undercurrent of emotional stuff going on that they're kind of just hiding, and they don't think anyone can see it. But everyone feels it. They feel it in your aura. They feel it in your tone of voice. They feel it in your demeanor, you know. So yeah, so now we're going to get to the really good stuff. We're going to get to the not self themes. And basically, that's going to be the battle between, you know, what you need to do is wait for that clarity from the solar plexus. What you need to do is allow that solar plexus clarity to emerge and wait to respond to life. And then in that response, when someone offers something to you and they ask you a yes or no question, to kind of notice how you feel about it, but not yet commit yourself to it until you have that clarity. But there's this real struggle, because these undefined centers here, the ego and the G center and the spleen, they are going to constantly be like struggling for decision-making power. And basically the way that they're going to do that, so the not self theme of the generator is frustration. So what these not self-centers are going to do is they're going to basically threaten frustration. And the way I look at it is almost like generators have PTSD of frustration. Like you order food at the restaurant, part of you expects to be frustrated. Just expects to be frustrated. Frustration goes so deep in the generator, we're so conditioned to expect it and to brace ourselves for it that, you get in a relationship, you just kind of expect you're going to be frustrated. You get in the car to drive, and you just expect you're going to be frustrated. Like, everything we do, we expect is going to be a certain level of frustration. The same way the reflector might expect disappointment, or the manifestor might expect someone's going to interfere with them and cause them anger, or the projector might expect that things are going to end bitterly. And so we kind of, and by the way, I want to just point out, human design is not some sort of system of positive thinking. It's not like, and if you just change your expectations, everything will be good. No. You expect those things for good reason. You expect those things because your whole life you've been making decisions according to what's not you and ignoring what is you. And when you do that, that's what happens, right? So that's the premise anyway. I'm not saying you personally, but the general you. So basically, looking at the high level of these themes here, the undefined ego is constantly trying to prove or improve itself, and it's constantly feeling threatened. And so what this is going to say is, I can avoid frustration if I can just get better. If I can just be a good person, if I can just be better, if I can improve myself. And I can avoid frustration if I prove to them what a good person I am, or how effective I am, or how much I care, or how sincere I am, or any of those things. So it's all about proving as a way to avoid frustration. And so then you're offered a job, and instead of waiting for that solar plexus, instead of waiting and going, I'm just going to wait and see what my body does with the clarity, the mind goes, hey, this job, you're going to be able to improve yourself a lot. This job is going to allow you to improve yourself. It's about self-improvement. And this job, you get this prestige. You're going to be able to prove to other people your value. You'll be able to prove how valuable you are. You'll be able to prove how valuable you are to the company, but you'll also be able to prove how valuable you are to your friends or to your loved ones or family or all these people. You're going to prove to them. And if you prove to them how good you are, then you're not going to be frustrated. And so that's this whole rationale that happens in a split second. And then you go, yeah, I'll take the job. And the yes, I'll take the job is a purely mental decision that had nothing to do with the sacral response and nothing to do with the clarity that comes out of the solar plexus. So you see the dilemma here. What human design is really trying to do is hack and deconstruct and rebuild your entire decision-making process in a way that's frankly terrifying, because you're making decisions that are not mental, and the mind is so terrified of making it. You know what it's terrified of is it's terrified it's going to end up being frustrated, right? It's like the carrot and the stick, and the carrot is satisfaction and the stick is frustration, and it's saying, if you just let the mind make decisions, if you use that mind to make all your decisions, you're going to get that carrot. You're going to be so satisfied. You're going to get all the satisfaction you want. And otherwise, you're going to get hit with this stick of frustration again and again. And it's exactly backwards, right? So really, the human design premise is if you wait for your solar plexus clarity, then you're going to find satisfaction. Then you're really going to find satisfaction. If you don't, then your sacral energy is not really going to be engaged, and you're going to quit. Because generators are the great quitters. They quit on things. They quit on relationships. They quit on jobs. They quit on all these different things because their sacral energy was never really engaged in the first place. And your sacral energy needs to be engaged for you to have that energy to persevere. But instead, they make promises, especially with undefined ego. And they try to use willpower. And willpower is so different. The reason a generator will quit is because their sacral is not engaged. They didn't really want to do it. If you ask them, do you really want to do this? They didn't actually have that true sacral, I really want to do that. Instead, what they have is the undefined ego, which, and I know this very well because I'm a generator with the undefined ego, is basically going to try to promise and try to make commitments. So with your undefined ego, you are never supposed to promise anything. You're never supposed to make a promise. Because the second you make a promise, you have this tremendous weight weighing on you that literally physically damages your heart, by the way. It's not just it's very literal, but it also is psychologically deleterious. And basically, you're trying to use this willpower, and then it can directly affect your self-esteem too. Because then, if you don't live up to your promise, then you have this self-esteem issue of what's wrong with me, why didn't I live up to my promise, and so on. So you can see that with that undefined ego, it's all about like, I'm going to make promises and prove and show off my willpower, and I'm going to really prove to other people how good I am, and I'm going to do all this improvement of myself, and to really prove my value, to even prove my value to myself. Because I don't even know that I have this value. I don't know that I deserve satisfaction, that I deserve happiness, or I deserve health, or all these things. So I'm going to try to prove to myself, and I can prove it to myself by doing all these things that basically prove my value. And then I will be satisfied. But it's not true. It's not satisfying. The only thing that's satisfying is correctly using your sacral energy, and everything else is frustrating, right? But again, the mind is going to be like, make decisions according to this, So that brings us to the G center. The G center is always searching. It's basically the theme of searching. They say it's searching for identity, direction, love, but really it's just searching. It's just about looking. So the thought is, I better keep looking. If I want to get a good house, I got to look for the house. If I want to be in a good relationship, I have to find the right love for me. If I want to live in the right city or town or countryside, I have to find that right place. I have to go search for it and look for it and find it. If I want to go to a good restaurant that's satisfying to me, I got to go find that restaurant. It's like it happens all pervasive, all different things. It's like feeling like you have to find them. And there's a grass is always greener thing, because there's always the sneaking suspicion that you haven't found it, and that somewhere else would be better, right? And if I just could find it, then I'd be satisfied. If I just found my true love, then I'd be satisfied. If I just found the best place to live, then I'd be satisfied. If I just found the right house. I know a man who's almost 70 years old now, and he has undefined G center. And by the way, these places can also become great sources of wisdom, and he definitely has some great wisdom about it too. But it was also really sad to me. He said, I've never actually felt like I belonged anywhere. And then he said, but home is right here. And that's a real undefined G center thing. Because people with defined G center, they're like, no, what are you talking about? This is my home. But when you have undefined G center, you never really feel like a place is your home. But it's not a negative thing. It's only negative when it's ruling your life. It's only negative when that's the way you're making decisions. And you go, this will give me direction. Like, do I want this job? Well, yes, I'll say yes to this job because it'll give me direction. It'll give me a career path. It'll be the right place for me, and all this feeling of having to search for the right place. Then we have the outermost shell, which is the spleen. This is what other people are going to see. So there's a whole hierarchy to the not self, and people aren't going to see that undefined ego. They're not going to see you as someone who's threatened. They're not going to see you as someone who has low self-esteem or variable self-esteem and is trying to prove yourself and trying to improve yourself. They're not going to see all that. Someone who's willing to make promises to others to prove their value and so on. What they're going to see is someone who is not letting go. And they can even see this like as a boss or something. That might be great, right? Because the boss might go, oh, here's someone who's not going to quit. Here's someone who's going to stick it out. They're going to hold on to it. They're not going to let go. Because undefined spleen, I was just saying how the generators are great quitters. Well, yeah, you might quit some things, but the undefined spleen really wants to hold on to anything that offers security or stability or anything that... It's like holding on to things that aren't good for you. But holding on to them with the justification that if you just keep holding on, you can avoid frustration. So let's look at some of the gates. I know this is getting kind of long, but we're going to look at some of the gates in particular. Oh, there we are. Sorry, I've been missing out. I've been missing out on all the comments here. So I'm going to look at the particular gates, because this is the really juicy stuff. I spent a long time earlier kind of talking about the channels, and I have a hard time. I have completely undefined, this is me right here. I have undefined head, and I have undefined ajna. And so there's definitely explanations from personality theory about why I might ramble the way I do, but the explanation in human design is simply that I don't really know what I'm going to say before I say it, and I just kind of just let things drift through. So we're going to go through these. I'm going to look at the individual gates. So okay, starting with the ego here. So this is the ego center. You see we have 26, 51, 21, and 40. And they're all undefined. So it's completely undefined ego. Completely open ego with no activations. And so when it's completely open, in some ways it's almost beyond the binary. It's almost like it doesn't even have a fixed way that it tries to prove or improve. And it can be hard to notice how it's doing it because it's so open. But what you might notice, so I'm going to talk about when you have an unactivated gate in an undefined center, and then you have a gate pointing at it. So you see gate 45 here is pointing at 21. So whenever you have something pointing at it, you feel like something is missing in you. And the deconditioning means accepting that it's not missing. It's not missing. You don't need that thing that you think you need. So gate 21 is about control, and it's about stamina, basically. It's about stamina. And so you might feel like you don't have enough stamina, or like you're not... So I'll just go through the gates really quick. If you want to really hurt someone's feelings and they have the undefined ego, tell them, you don't have the stamina, you don't have the courage, you don't have the guts, and you don't have the capacity. And that'll really hurt them. And I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying that this is the touchiness of the undefined ego. I have undefined ego too. So believe me, this is my ego right here. So that would really hurt my feelings too. And part of the human design deconditioning is to not try to have those things or not worry about those things. Because gate 21, it's all about being in control and stamina. It's kind of this feeling of like, if only I were better at self-control, and if only I were better at just keeping on top of things, then I wouldn't be frustrated. The reason I'm so frustrated is because I just don't have enough stamina to stay in control, and if only I could improve myself and be better. It's not true. Frustration only comes from one place. Frustration comes from mental decisions, right? And satisfaction comes from making decisions out of emotional clarity. But again, you're offered a decision and someone says, hey, do you want to go on this fast with me for a week? And you go, oh yeah, I can improve myself because I can prove to myself how much self-control I have. Or like, do you want to, I don't know if you smoke cigarettes or something, but do you want to quit smoking cigarettes? Oh yeah, I'll quit smoking so I'll prove how much self-control I have. That's the gate 21 thing. Now gate 51 is feeling like, if only I had a little more courage, if only I weren't afraid of the unknown, then I would be satisfied. Because gate 51 is about jumping blindly into the unknown. And again, when you have a gate pointing at it, it feels like there's something wrong with you. It's different. Like this is a different one. See how there's no gate? 37 is not pointing at 40. It's not activated. So you don't really feel like you're missing out on gate 40. But you feel like you're missing 21, 51, and 26. Theoretically, your mileage may vary. I don't want to make too many assumptions here. But theoretically, when you have a gate pointing like that, you feel like if I just had this thing, then I would be satisfied. Then I wouldn't be frustrated. So 26 is all about selling yourself. It's all about being able to get up in front of a room and like convince a whole board of directors to buy your product, or that kind of like smarmy. I always think of like John Hamm from Mad Men. This kind of smarmy, charming, like knowing to tell people what they want to hear, all that stuff. So this would look like, if only I were better at selling myself, if only I were better at convincing people, then I could avoid frustration. And so then someone comes to you with a decision and they say like, hey, do you want to join this leadership training? And you go, oh, that'll help me become better at those things. Like, yes, but of course that's a mental decision. So, I mean, maybe it's a poor example, but you see the idea. The other thing is people who have these, you might be drawn to. Like, you might be drawn to somebody and like, wow, I really love this about that person. They have that smarmy, charming kind of thing going on where it's like, they're egotistical, but it's really just this kind of self-confident, smarmy thing. And God, I wish I had that. I have gate 26. So I know all about it. I have gate 26 right here. And so, I have to be careful with that because gate 26 tells people what they want to hear. And the first thing out of my mouth is usually what somebody else wants to hear. And it has that kind of smarmy, charming sales guy thing. So because you have gate 44 activated, it's pointing at 26 here. There's going to be this decision-making process. If only I were better at selling myself, then I could avoid frustration. And I better make decisions that help me become better at selling myself. And gate 51, jumping into the unknown and all that courage. If only I were more courageous, if I were better at just moving to an unknown city where and jumping in, and so I better learn how to do that. Now, gate 40 is different. Gate 40, you feel like the other person is missing. Like, this is like, there's nobody there to provide 37 for me. So it's kind of funny how that works. Like, in these, for 21, 51, and 26, it's like, it feels like a personal defect. And so the deconditioning here is realizing you don't have any personal defects. There's no such thing as a personal defect. Like, the whole idea of improving yourself and making yourself better is propaganda of the mind to try to make you make decisions not trusting your body. But your body is designed perfectly exactly the way it is, and your body has this perfect mechanism for making decisions and navigating through life, and a perfect mechanism for knowing exactly how to get you the satisfaction in life and to have a meaningful, rich, full life. And you have everything that you need, right? But it feels like you don't. So the deconditioning here is realizing you already have it and not being deceived and not being fooled to make decisions that give you these things, because you don't really need them. Now, this is a different one entirely. This 4037 here is very different because here, so gate 40 is all about hard work for other people, and then gate 37 is about affection, the affection you get for hard work. So 40 is like, the joke is that it's kind of like the mother who's like, I work so hard for you, and I slave away to send you through school, and kind of like trying to prove to the other how hard you work for them. And then the 37 is affection and tenderness and support. This is a tribal channel. So this is the feeling like nobody else is there to support me, so I have to do this all by myself. I have to work really hard all by myself. I have to be a really hard worker. I have to prove that this is all about having capacity. I have to prove that I have the capacity. I have to prove that I have what it takes to work really hard, because nobody else will ever help me, and they won't even give me the affection, and they won't be there for me. I don't have the affection that I need from others. That's what that's feeling. And of course, it's not true. It's not true at all. You'll get all the affection you need from others making the right decisions with the solar plexus, but here is like, I'll make this decision that proves that I have the capacity to do this. And so it's making decisions, to prove yourself again. So I won't go through all these because there's just so many, but you get the feeling for how, when you start learning about the particular gates, you learn how to read the not self themes. And you basically learn how, if it's a completely open channel, it feels like there's nobody else there for you, so you have to do it yourself. If there's activation on the other end of the channel, it feels like you're being like persecuted by it almost. Like there's something defective about you. Like, I'm missing this. If only I had this, everything would be different. Now, the third situation is it's an undefined center, and there's an activated gate. And this activated gate is the thing that you feel like you have to do. You always have to do. And so feeling like, if I do this, then I will find satisfaction. So here with gate 25, it's feeling like you have to do that gate 25 thing. So what is the gate 25 thing? Well, gate 25 is about preserving innocence and about having personal integrity. So part of it could be, I have to find the right place where people aren't jaded and cynical, and where they're not going to try to corrupt me and take advantage. And I basically have to maintain my integrity. That could be part of it. If I'm able to maintain, I have gate 25 also, so there's kind of a theme there too, but I relate to it, although I have a defined G center. And then here, gate 1 is about creativity, and 2 is basically the most about finding direction. So here is like, if only I were more creative, if only I had more creative outlet, if only I had more creative inspiration. Like, what's wrong with me that I don't have more creativity? Of course, there's nothing wrong with you, and this is just the rationale of how the mind works. And then gate 2 is like, I have to find my direction. If only I had the direction, if only I knew where to go. And so it's going to be really like making decisions that prioritize anything that gives you that sense of direction. So someone could really like say, this is going to be the right place for you because here's a place where we all have integrity and no one's going to corrupt you, and they're not like, what's a great way to put it? With 25, it's almost like worried that somebody else is going to be manipulative or have ulterior motives. And so, like, I'm going to take you to a place where people don't have ulterior motives, where they have pure motives, and where you can be really creative and have all the things you need in that way. You know, that's going to be some of the G center thing. And it's going to be basically like looking for the right place and then getting excited and then eventually getting disillusioned. Because again, there's that solar plexus wave, which goes through excitement and boredom, or through thinking something's really cool and then getting really disillusioned with it, and so on. And that's why, like, a decision, like, say somebody wants you to be in a relationship with them, because G center is all about love too. And they say, I want you to be in a relationship. Well, if you're making decisions with your mind, you're going to go, is this person going to help me maintain my personal integrity? And, you know, then yes. Are they going to give me this center, this direction and focus in life? Stuff like that. Now for the spleen, yeah, I see that with gate 48 here, you have 16 activated, 48 is the gate of depth. That's going to be, if only I had more depth, like the feeling like you need more depth. Not to say that you don't, and again, this is no comment whatsoever, but a lot of people who are missing gate 48 are really like looking for, you know, understanding things really deeply and knowing about things super deeply, and they want to just like go to those depths. I'd be interested to see Carl Jung's chart, actually, since he was, of course, the founder of depth psychology. And then 57 is about intuition and intelligence. If only I were smarter, you know, that's that feeling. If only I were smarter, then everything would be different. No, you're brilliant, you know, it's not about that. But again, it's the deconditioning and realizing that you don't have to be smarter. You don't have to be deeper. You don't have to try to have these things that feel like they're missing. And then gate 44 is the primary way of the things you'd be holding on to. So it's interesting. So you have one activation in the G center and one activation in the spleen. So the primary thing you'd be looking for is 25, which sometimes it's hard to deconstruct exactly how that's going to play out. I was saying it has to do with innocence. You can read more about it. 44 has to do with the management of material resources. This is the channel of capitalism. It's a tribal channel. It's basically, I think of like 44 as somebody who's really good at managing other people's egos in a way. Like, I know how to deal with those inflated egos. I know how to keep them happy and so on, because it's pointing at gate 26 here. And so because you have that 44, it could be like, I have to hold on to anything that helps me deal with other people's egos. I have to hold on to anything that gives me material resources and material wealth. I can't let go of those things. But then all these totally open ones are places where you feel like you have to do it yourself. Like, you feel like you have to do 28 yourself. I have to find my own life purpose. 28 is about finding purpose in life. I know I was talking about the G center with purpose, but 28 is connected in that. 28 is the gate of basically taking risks or taking chances for a higher purpose. Well, I have to do this myself because nobody else is there to help me, to give me that energy. Or, you know, 32 is about social interaction and kind of being part of the tribe. I have to do this myself because nobody else there is there to help me with my ambition. I don't have anyone who's going to help me work with the tribe. Or 18 is about improving things and judging them and perfecting them, making them better. I got to do this myself because nobody else is there to help me with it. But anyway, so in all of these cases, there's going to be this feeling that if you do these things, you'll avoid frustration, right? Like, if I can improve myself, and if I can find my direction and keep searching and not give up searching, and if I keep holding on to things, then I'll finally find the satisfaction that I want, and then I can avoid frustration. But that's not really the case. And what the human design experiment is about is seeing what happens if, instead of that, you just make decisions based on a purely mechanical process, basically an unconscious bodily process, and you just start to make decisions that way. And like, what would happen? What would happen if you chose your job that way? And, you know, Ra jokes that people, that especially generators, are always afraid. They say, so what happens if someone says, do you want to go hunt whale blubber up in Alaska? And I go, uh-huh. Well, what do I do? Well, you do it. I mean, if you're not emotionally defined. If you're emotionally defined, you wait a week or you wait however long to dread it and to get excited about it, and then it'll finally settle. When you have emotional definition, you either start excited and then you lose the excitement and it never comes back, or you start excited and then lose the excitement and then it does come back, right? And you have more clarity about it. Or you start with a sense of dread, and then the dread goes away, and then the dread comes back, or the dread goes away and just stays away. Like, there's different possible ways it can go, right? And that's something to be aware of. But yeah, so the main thing, though, is that, as a generator, your entire decision-making process is going to be oriented around avoiding frustration. And frustration is going to be like kryptonite to generator. This feeling that everything's going to end in frustration anyway. And the mind is going to be trying to stay in control by having you make decisions with the promise that you'll avoid frustration if only you make decisions according to these criteria. These are basically the criteria. And as I said, there's a hierarchy where the ego is the strongest of the hierarchy. So that's like the deepest, like the complete foundation of the not self is the ego. That's like the deepest stuff. The deepest thing is like this feeling of feeling threatened and feeling not sure of value, either undervalued or, like I don't deserve this, like in the sense, it's so funny when someone says I don't deserve this, they literally can be saying it in either direction. Like, I'm better than this, I deserve to be treated better, or wow, you're treating me so well, I don't deserve this, I'm undeserving of being treated this good. And it's so funny because the undefined ego always feels like I don't deserve this, but it goes both directions. It goes both directions. Someone's mean, and it's like, I deserve better than this. And then someone's nice, and it's like, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve as good of this as this. It's so funny how that works. It feels undeserving on either side of the spectrum. But, so that's the core. And then on the outside, what people actually see is, okay, here's someone who's going to hold on tightly to things. Here's someone who really, they're not going to let go of things. They're not going to let it slide. They're not going to, but yeah, you can see how these all work together. Yeah, here we go. And so basically that's your kind of, these are the centers to be aware of. And you notice how they're not always activated at the same time. Like, you'll notice when the ego flares up. That's when you start to feel like you have to prove something. Or like when you get offended. Anytime you're offended, that's the flare up of the ego. Then you can notice when the G center flares up, that's going to be feeling like somewhere else is the better place for you. A different job is better, a different relationship is better, a different place to live is better, a different anything is better, right? You're going to start to feel like the grass is greener somewhere else. And then with the spleen flaring up, the spleen is going to feel like, unsafe and all alone and unprotected and kind of like cold and clingy and wanting something that gives a sense of security and warmth and wanting to feel good, and how those go together. I keep forgetting to check managing others' egos. So interesting, yeah. Yeah, I've sometimes wished I had Gate 44. It's so funny, when I first learned human design, I wished I had all the stuff that I don't have. Like, I was really like, I'll pull up my chart and compare for a second. So here's my chart. Let's put them side by side. Oh, wait. I guess I can make these smaller. Yeah, I really, really wished, I wished that I had a lot of the centers, actually, most of them. But I wish that I had a defined ego, because I thought, wow, the defined ego, those people, they're so good at keeping their promises, and they have so much willpower, and look at me, what's wrong with me? I have so little willpower, I hated it. And then I had undefined throat, and I thought, oh God, my undefined throat, I'm always trying to get people's attention, and they're always ignoring me, and I'm such an annoying person. And my undefined spleen, oh, I'm so clingy. People with defined spleen, they're so easy to let go of things, and I just hold on to them. But what's interesting is over time, you actually become really grateful for these undefined centers, because the undefined centers are where you actually really get to experience life. Like, these defined centers you have are, again, like I was saying earlier, kind of like how you affect people. And the undefined centers are really how you take in and what you experience and what you see the other, and you can become so wise. Like, with undefined ego, you can learn who's trustworthy and who isn't, who has the willpower and who doesn't. With the undefined G center, you can learn all about other people's identities and who has a strong sense of identity and who doesn't, and who can guide you, who does have a good direction for you and who doesn't. By the way, with undefined G center, if you ever want to move, don't go looking for a house. Just tell people in your life, and if you have the right people in your life, they're going to find the right house for you. and you meet the right people in the right places. Like if a friend of yours takes you to a restaurant and the waiter spills food all over you and you have a really bad time in the restaurant, it's probably not a good friend for you because they took you to a place that wasn't right for you. A good friend will take you to an environment where you feel really comfortable. And with the Undefined G Center, you're very susceptible to the environment, very open to the environment, very open to the energies of the environment. It's not like me. I have a Defined G Center, so it's funny, I've been looking for a house to buy, and I've been taking people with Undefined G Center with me to ask them what the vibe of the place is like, right? Because if they get a good vibe there, but I don't notice that stuff as much. I'm not receptive to it. I'm not open to it. But yeah, with Undefined G Center, start noticing, it's like you don't have to find the right place, you just have to discern who's the right person for you. Because the right person will take you to the right place. And then you'll meet more of the right people there. And the wrong person, even if they're your best friend for 20 years, don't let them take you places if everywhere they take you, you have a bad time and you feel uncomfortable. If they take you to a party and you feel really uncomfortable at that party and you don't really feel welcome and you don't feel good there, then they're not somebody who actually is meant to take you places. And then with the spleen, I have undefined spleen too, you can get this tremendous wisdom about the health of others. You can know who's healthy and who isn't, and you can know who's feeling good and who isn't. And you can become wise in all these ways. These are like the windows into other people. So that's what it's really all about. Human design is ultimately about, it's about the deconditioning, which is essentially making decisions according to this mechanical process in your body, trusting what really is you, and as you do that more and more, it frees up your mind to just watch, and then you can become really wise through just watching and seeing, because the mind's not doing double duty. The mind isn't constantly having to try to make decisions too. It's not like, I got to make the best decision, and if I make a bad decision, we're going to end up frustrated. And that's the scariest thing, is the feeling that if you're not on the ball all the time, that you're going to end up frustrated. But that's the real experiment right there. The experiment is what happens. Like for me, I'm just a pure generator. I don't even have solar plexus. I'm just literally, I just have my sacral here to make decisions. That's it. So for me, it's like someone says, hey, do you want to go help me move boxes? And I go, uh-huh. Then that's what I'm doing on Sunday. I'm going to move boxes. End of story. That's it. But if I say, yeah, that sounds really great, then that means that I'm going to be absolutely miserable and have a terrible day. Because I betrayed myself, because I said yes from a mental reason, from a mental place, rather than honoring. That's my joke with the generators. I think I said it in the stream last week. I said something like, if a generator tells you I love you, you never know. But if you say, do you love me? And they go, uh-huh, then that's the real thing. I'm pretty sure Ross said that. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions at all, post in the comments. There's so much more in this chart. I may even do another one with this chart where we go into some of the particular placements. I'm definitely going to do one on the 5-1. I want to go through all the profiles, but the 5-1 profile is really interesting. But I think this is good for today. We covered the channels, and we covered the not self themes, and that is actually a lot to cover. So thank you all for watching. The Undefined G Center is pretty fascinating. All the undefined centers, the undefined centers are really where you get that's where you really get the experience of life. That's like, they say that's like where you go to school, but it's more than that. It's where you really get to take in life, and they stop becoming dilemmas when you stop trying to make decisions with them. The Undefined G Center is actually great. It means everything comes to you. You don't have to find anything. You don't have to find anything at all. You have no obligation to ever look for anything in your whole life. You don't have to go looking for love. You'll get offers for love throughout your life. You don't have to go looking for direction. You'll have offers of different directions your life could take that just come to you, right? Same with Undefined Ego. You don't have to make promises. People who have Defined Ego are continually forced to make promises to move through the world. And if they don't make promises, then everybody is annoyed with them and stuff. But with Undefined Ego, it's an amazing experiment. Just try to never make a promise. Someone said to me the other night, promise me you'll do this. And I said, no. She said, why not? And I said, I want to do it, but I'm not going to promise you. And she was like, oh, but she couldn't actually get angry at me. She couldn't get mad. It's amazing. I basically never make promises. I mean, even doing this, like I express desire a lot. I say I really want to do that, and someone can double check with me and go, are you sure you want to? And I'll go, uh-huh, if I really do. I'll have that kind of true spontaneous reaction. But I don't make promises. Even doing this, I didn't say, oh, I promise you I'll get it done. And then I noticed people have undefined ego. They say, oh, I'm so sorry I was so late. I promise I'll be faster. And I just say, don't promise me anything. I don't want a single promise. Just do it if you want to, So it's actually really nice. The undefined center has actually become a really nice thing after a while. Undefined spleen, you don't have to hold on to things, Like, you can just let go and just let things come and go through your life, and you'll be totally fine. So it's really, where you have definition is where you have responsibility. Oh, I'll end on this, actually, because we're talking about responsibility. You only have collective channels. You have an abstract collective channel here, an abstract collective channel here, and a logical collective channel here. All collective. That means you have no tribal and you have no individual. Therefore, you have no tribal or individual obligations. Tribal obligations are to be supportive of people, being there for them and supporting them through difficult times. Individual, your obligation is to be empowered in yourself and not let others interfere with you. Well, you don't have either of those obligations, so you don't have to do either of those things. The only obligation you have is to share, and that is a very real obligation. You have to share your realizations, you have to share your experiences, and you have to share your formulas and your logic. And as long as you're sharing, you're doing it right. All right, thank you so much for watching. It's been great. This has been Human Design Deconditioning Guide. Thanks a lot.